Hi everyone, it's Cassie. Welcome back for another Trinity Stamps video. Today we are going to be making a really cute alien card. I know maybe cute and alien don't necessarily go together, but this is adorable and I love this stamp set. It is called We've Come for Cake, and I've got the stamps and the dies to go along with it, and we're going to work on our background. We're going to color these up with some alcohol inks. We're just going to have fun making this card. I am using some Distress Watercolor cardstock. I'm going to use the smooth side. There is a rough side and a smooth side. I'm going to use the smooth side, and I am going to use my Distress Oxide inks to blend that on the background using my blending buddies. And we're going to try to get like a sunset kind of look. So I've started with some squeezed lemonade. I'm just blending that across the bottom. I'll keep that blending buddy handy. And then I'm going to come in with some saltwater taffy. I'll clean up my mess in between because I don't want to get too much contamination in between as well. But we'll bring in the blending buddy for our pinks, and we'll sort of blend that into our squeezed lemonade, working our way up the cardstock. And then bring in that yellow blending buddy again and just kind of mix that a little bit better. The Distress Oxides just blend so nicely. They're so fun to blend with. They blend quickly and they blend smoothly, so it's always fun to work with them. The next color would be Broken China. I'll blend that into our saltwater taffy a little bit and up to the top. Well, not all the way yet. And then we'll bring in our saltwater taffy one again and blend that. And then our final color, well, it isn't the final color. The next color we're going to use is Uncharted Mariner. It's such a pretty blue. And I'm going to use a piece of Post-it tape on my fingers so that I don't get my finger transfer, because that will pick up the color and I don't really want that. So we've blended that a bit. I think that looks a little rough, but it's going to get better. I'm going to clean up my mess. And then I'm going to bring in my black blending buddy, and what I have already on the brush is what I'm going to just blend onto my card base or my card panel. So I didn't ink it up with anything else. I already had color on it, and I'm just going to blend that right on. I don't want to stop there, so I'm going to bring in this solar spray. If you haven't heard of these by Simon Hurley Create, these are pretty fabulous. I am using the color Beluga. It's a blue, and I've spritzed that on there after kind of shaking it up. It works so well on dark cardstocks, and right now it just looks like it's a water splatter on there. I'm going to heat set that, but when I bring that up to the camera and kind of turn it side to side, you're going to be able to see the blue shimmer, and it looks so good. How pretty is that, especially with those colors back there? Just love that. All right, so we'll set that off to the side. And I am going to ink up my stamps. So I've got them in my MISTI. I'm going to stamp these onto some Express It cardstock. And I'll ink this up with some Blackout ink because, like I said, I want to do some alcohol marker coloring. And so I'll just stamp those down. I have to do that a couple times just to make sure that everything is stamped well. And if you do have to stamp a few times, it's not a bad idea to hit that with your heat tool just so that that ink dries before you start coloring. So I'm using my Olos, and I'm going to I'm going to color my aliens to be a blue. I mean, I've personally never seen an alien, so I don't know what they look like. So I'm going to go with blue, creative license here, because I think that'll make the background pop a little more too. And we're just going to start light and go dark. That's typically how I color. And if you're new to alcohol markers, just play around and you'll find what works best for you. And then we'll use some Ys for our moon. I'm not going to actually end up blending this out. I want that to be a pretty stark contrast. So I'll just leave that color as is, bring in that color for our lights on our UFO, and then I'll start coloring that more of a warm gray. So these are the warm grays. I've got warm gray 3 and 5. And my marker had a little bit of an issue there. I could tell it was getting super juicy, so I just brought that to my microfiber mat and kind of blotted that. That is the nice thing, and also can be a little bit of a problem if you're not paying attention. These Olos are super, super juicy. I have never been concerned about them drying out. In fact, I've been more concerned about them spitting up extra ink. And so all I do for that is just make sure that I'm watching the tip of my pen. And if it gets super wet looking, that means it's about ready to spit some ink on your project. So pay attention to that. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, you just need to be aware. So we'll do some chocolate cake, and then I'm going to start coloring that cute little farm scene down there. How adorable is that with the cute red barn? So I'm from Nebraska, and this little farm scene just kind of speaks to me. I was not necessarily a country girl. I come from a small town. My friends all lived on farms, but we lived inside the small town. So I didn't have horses or farms or any fun stuff like that. But yeah, do love the farm scene. Speaks to my heritage. Because I actually had cousins that had farms and all that too. So, all right, we'll color that more of a yellow orange, bring in a darker color, and then we'll blend that up. Just making it look like it's darker more towards the bottom. Same thing with the other side. We're going to use a green on that side. And then we'll blend that up also. We're using the YG 8.5 and 8.7. 8.7 that is. And then blend that up. And then we'll do a little bit on the clouds, and we will be ready to die cut our little scene out. So I'm just going to use the matching dies, tack that down with a little bit of mint tape, and then we'll be ready to die cut this out. There they are, super fun. And then I'll bring in my scene and we'll start playing around with how I want those pieces to go on there. It's at this point that I realize the hats aren't going to work. It looks too disconnected, too disjointed. And so I'm going to just take those and stamp that right on there. I'm going to also stamp the beam on my background. And because I used Distress Oxides there, I do want to use a pigment ink. So I am going to ink up my hats using that same Blackout ink, but I'm going to ink up the beam using that VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink because that needs to stamp on top of those Distress Oxides. For my sentiments, I've got some black sentiment stock from Pear Blossom Press, and I am inking up my sentiments with some juicy embossing ink, and then I'll cover that with some fine detail white embossing powder. And then we are going to heat set that till that is smooth and melted. This is actually the second time I've stamped these, just to let you know, to full transparency. I stamped them on the back, and I didn't get good coverage, and I think I smeared one, so we stamped them again. We're going to die cut these out. And so when I do go to adhere them, you're going to see that there's sentiment on the back as well. Here comes quality control. And now I'm going to get my card base ready. So my card base measured 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches, scored at 4.25. We're going to put the 2 sentiments on the inside. This is a close encounter of the getting older kind, and we have come for the cake at the bottom of that. I'm going to stamp one of the other little aliens from the stamp set, and I'm actually going to bring in some tumbled glass distress ink, which isn't formulated for, or this is broken china, not formulated for stamping, but it works fine since it's on the inside of the card. And now we can start adhering all of our pieces to our panel. So I'm going to use this, just some regular glue for most pieces. So the cake, our little scene back there, the moon, but for our sentiment and our little aliens, we are going to use some foam tape. And then we'll be, yes, that's Miles if you heard him. Then we'll be able to adhere all this down to the front of our card base. We're not going to have any white showing on that card base, so it goes right to the edge. And then we can peel off our release papers, and then we can just adhere down our pieces. And then I did have those hats, so I thought might as well just stick those on the inside of our card. So I'm just going to stick those right behind our sentiments because why not? It's a birthday card. It'll be fun. And then once we're done with that, that's going to finish off our card for today. So I love how this turned out. That solar spray on that background looks so good. These aliens are adorable. If you like this card, be sure to hit that like button. Definitely consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And as always, I will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.